Hello everyone, my name is Zohir Chaudhary and this video is about cultural context in global health practice. In this set of slides, we will define and explain why it is important to understand culture in global health work. So what is culture? In the 19th century, anthropologist Edmund Tyler defined culture as that complex whole which includes knowledge, belief, art, morals, law, custom, and any other capabilities acquired by man as a member of society. Since then, there have been literally hundreds of definitions of culture, but among them, a modern definition: culture is a set of rules or standards shared by members of a society, which, when acted upon by the members, produce behavior that falls within a range of variation for members consider proper and acceptable. And a more simpler definition of culture is that culture is behavior and beliefs that are learned and shared. Most of the definitions about culture have the following concepts in common: shared ideas, meanings, and values, socially learned, not genetically transmitted, patterns of behavior that are guided by these shared ideas, meanings, and values, often exist at an unconscious level, as well as constantly modified through lived experiences. The last of this concept, lived experiences, comprises the experiences that people and sometimes groups of people go through as they live their lives. These experiences modify their culturally influenced beliefs and behaviors. As a consequence, culture is not static on either the group or the individual level. Rather, people are constantly changing. Culture operates in the following domains: the family and social groups, individual group and development, religion, art and music, economy, politics and law, and as well as communication, for example. A useful metaphor for culture is like an iceberg. Culture is very similar to an iceberg. About 10% of an iceberg is above the water. The rest is below the surface. So culture has some aspects that are visible, just like an iceberg, the top part, and many others that can only be suspected, guessed, or learned as you go through, as you grow to understand culture. When one first enters into another culture, one usually first um, interacts with the top 10%, literally the tip of the iceberg. Sometimes people make assumptions or develop ideas about another cultural community without really understanding the internal or deep culture that makes up the majority of that culture's value and beliefs. Like an iceberg, the visible part of culture is only a small part of a much larger whole. Culture is similar in that people at first just see a small portion of a person's culture based on things such as clothing, appearance, speech, grooming, greeting, rituals, music, arts, or dances. However, these observations comprise just a fraction of a person's culture. Just like with a physical iceberg, a cultural iceberg contains essential characteristics beneath that surface. So how do we interpret some of these core cultural values that lie further deep? So buried further in the cultural iceberg is the interpretation of core values. These behaviors may be better understood and interpreted when individuals who are part of the culture conduct observable behaviors, such as which words people use to talk, the tone of voice they use, the laws that are passed, friendship, place of work, concepts of time, personal space, the mannerisms they use when interacting with others, and the ways that they communicate with others. Other people interpret core values by observing how individuals behave in their professional lives. There are relationships among these various parts. The various parts of the culture iceberg model interact with one another, but the connection between them are not equally strong. The top 10% of the iceberg will not impact the unseen rules or the core. However, a change in the core can result in dramatic shifts in the unseen rules. If enough of the core is dismantled or changed too significantly, a society can fall apart culturally, and dissolution of a society's culture can lead to the dissolution of society, especially in the face of stronger societies that have vibrant cultures. For example, significant changes were brought to the Aztec civilization by Spanish invaders. The conquistadores destroyed hundreds of temples and other religious sites. They also prevented religious practices that were associated with the core parts of Aztec culture. As a result, the Aztec civilization was decimated through cultural and religious prohibition. Aztecs were forced to convert to Catholicism and reject their most important cultural beliefs and practices. This made the societal group more submissive to the will of the Spanish. So, cultural determinants in global health. So, known as the rainbow model, in this conceptual model depicted in here to the left, we can see that besides general socioeconomic and environmental factors and conditions, cultural factors play a critical hierarchical role in determining people's health and health status around the globe. Cultural values present in a culture shape a country's welfare policies, levels of corruption, political system, or policy responses to epidemiological crises. Culture is an important determinant of health in the following ways. Culture is related to people's health behaviors. Example, attitude towards food, hygiene, birthing, and breastfeeding practices, smoking cessation or diet. Cultural factors also shape physiological processes, psychological processes. For example, multi-generational living arrangements, more common in Southern than in Northern Europe. Some of these arrangements also provide individuals with a dense social network support in some of these communities. Second, culture is an important determinant of people's perception of illness. Example, different cultures may have different beliefs about what is good health and what is illness. Third, different cultures have different practices concerning health and medical treatment. Example, Chinese and Indian cultures may have well-defined systems and medicines. And finally, culture affects usage of health services. For example, some use health services as soon as they feel ill. Others may visit health practitioners only when they're very sick. Culture affects approaches to medication or medical communication. The iceberg model can also be applied to health. So your current state of health, be it one of disease or vitality, is just the tip of the iceberg. This is the apparent part that shows. To understand all that creates and support your current state of health, you have to look underneath. The first level you encounter is the lifestyle behavioral level. What you eat, what you use and exercise, and how you exercise your body, how you relax and let go of stress, how you safeguard yourself from the hazards around you. Many of us follow lifestyles that we know are destructive, both to our own well-being and to that of our planet. Yet we may feel powerless to change them. To understand why, we must look still deeper to the cultural, physiological, psychological, motivational level. Here we find that what moves us to lead the lifestyle we've chosen. We learn how powerfully our cultural norms influence us, sometimes in insidious ways, like convincing us that excessive thinness is attractive. We can learn, for example, what payoffs we get from being overweight, smoking, driving recklessly, or from eating well, being considerate of others, and getting regular exercise. Exploring below the cultural below the psychological motivational level, we encounter the spiritual being and this new realm. Other possible descriptors include transpersonal, philosophical, or metaphysical. Actually, it is more a realm than a level because it has no clear boundaries. It includes everything in the unconscious mind, as well as concerns such as your reason for being, the real meaning of your life, or your place in the universe. The way in which you address these questions and the answers you choose underlie and permeate all of the layers above. Ultimately, this realm determines whether the tip of the iceberg presenting the state of your health is one of disease or illness. Um, there are some assigned reading, and this reading is actually very useful. It talks about the importance of culture in global health by Aubel and Shibanda and published 2022. That you go over and read this reading. And finally, some critical thinking questions. What cultural factors affect a person's health? Why is it important to be culturally sensitive and culturally competent in public health, and particularly in global health? We will definitely answer some of these questions in subsequent slides as well. So for now, that's all. Thank you.